The goal of every businessman is to make profit. As a matter of fact, his entire framework should be contingent on maximizing profit. As my father would rightly say, if you're involved in any form of transaction that does not translate to profit, then you'll be only making or engaging yourself in some form of activities and not a business transaction. And so the reasons or the rationale for us being here today is because we've discovered or come to terms with the fact that a lot of people, not just startup in terms of entrepreneurs, find it difficult to come to terms with the right amount of profit or the rate to which they should determine what will be right for them as entrepreneurs or the end users, which are the buyers, in terms of profit. They find it difficult to come to terms with what will be right, or let me put it this way, to determine the right or tangible amount of profit for whatever business they are doing. And so in today's content, we are trying to address how we can determine the right amount of profit for whatever business you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're a startup or you've been in business for a long time, but today we are going to clearly delineate on three important approaches, or clearly explain or mention three, but then we are going to clearly show or expatiate on one which will be easier for whoever, no matter the kind of business that you are doing. And so please permit me, before I go deeply into the content of today, permit me to just read from this bulletin I have listed out, and note, if you feel differently about this bulletin, feel free to drop your comments or your viewpoints in the comment section. So number one on my bulletin is that revenue does not necessarily mean profit. Turnover does not necessarily mean progressive business as well. Another point I want to bring out is that profit is intentional. Let me quote that again. Profit is intentional. Another one I have on my bulletin is learn to say no to clients if it will not grow your business. Profit is what will pay the bills, and so for every business, it is not revenue that is going to pay your bills, rather it is the profit that comes out from that business that is going to pay the bills. Another one I have on the bulletin is, in order for you to make profit, there must be sales or revenue. But then have it at the back of your mind that revenue is not what is going to pay your bills, rather it is profit. Thus, the reason why we want to address today's content or topic. And then also, for you to make profit, because we are saying that profit is what will pay the bill, for you to make profit, you have to understand from your basic economics that profit equals to revenue minus total cost. And of course, total cost has to do with your total variable cost and your total fixed cost or overhead cost. And so for you to get to profit, you have to be able to identify how much you've spent on a particular business, how much you're going to sell. The differences is what is going to give you your profit. It's as simple as that. And so let us go to the main concepts of today: approaches to determining the right or tangible profit for whatever business that we engage ourselves in. And so I'm going to tell us about three different approaches. Number one is the cost approach. Number two is the percentage approach. And number three is the existing market price. That is, in other words, comparative pricing. So I'm just going to explain the first and the last one quickly, because we are going to dwell mainly on the percentage approach, which is what is going to help us. No matter the kind of business you're doing, it will help you to determine the right amount of profit, a kind of profit that when you make, it will be able to take care of your staff, take care of yourself and your business. So number one we said was the cost approach. Well, like I rightly said before, if you understand the definition of profit, you understand that the cost approach has to do with you trying to find out your total cost, which is the total variable cost. Your running cost is your total variable cost, everything you spend daily, and then you add it up with how much you were able to get your entire consignment. If you add everything, it's going to give you your total cost. So for instance, if you're into the business of selling phones, and then the total cost of buying that phone, let's say, is $1 million or $1 million naira, whichever case it is, and then you come to realize that if you spend cost of transportation or other logistics, let's say cost of rent and all that, because you're going to spread that across, and then you calculate all those expenses and join them together, that is what is going to give you your total cost. So when you calculate this and you now, if everything enters, you realize that the cost of a single item, you realize that it's going to cost you, let's say, 100k to get this particular phone, and then you're selling that phone for, let's say, 130k or 120k. That means 20k is your profit, and that's how you can identify or make profit using the cost approach. Another approach to determining how to make profit is the comparative price. That is looking around, how much are your competitors selling that particular product you're selling. So you have to consider, if let's say the cost of buying a particular phone is 100k, and then you had spent total, everything put together, you have spent, let's say, 90k to get that phone. Then you have to look at how much your competitors are selling the same product around, and then you make your own judgment from there. You can decide to sell at 100, or let's say 110, or let's say 95 or whatever. So that is based on your own discretion. So that's how to determine profit using the comparative price analysis. So you're just looking around how much your competitors are selling that particular product, and then you fix your price around it. If, for instance, you realize that after trying to fix your price around what your competitors are selling, or how much your competitors are selling, you realize that you're not breaking even or making profit, then you have to go and look at your procurement issues, probably try to change your source of getting your product so that you can be able to still be in business. Now, let us dwell on the one I want to talk about most importantly, which is what will not really stress us, because it's what can apply to everybody, irrespective of if you're a beginner, if you're a startup entrepreneur, or you've already been in business for a long time, but you're still not coming to terms with what is right in terms of profit. So we are going to use the percentage approaches. I'm going to do some few calculations with my whiteboard marker, and so I ask you to follow me clearly. And so I want to use this opportunity, before I go clearly into the content or this approach clearly, I want to use this opportunity to please ask, if this is your first time being on this channel, please kindly like this content, kindly share this content, and subscribe to our channel. That way you help us to make progress. And so let's start with the percentage approach. What is the percentage approach all about? It's about you using percentages to get the right margin, profit margin for your business. And so if you're buying a particular product for, let's say, 100k, it could be in dollar, it could be in naira, whichever way it is, and then you would say, at what percentage do you want your profit margin to be? For me, I would say the minimum profit margin for every business, or whatever business you are doing, should be 30%. Of course, it can be more than 30% depending on these three reasons. One, the risk aversion related to your business. What do I mean? So it could be more or it could be less depending on one, the risk aversion related to your business. That is something, if you want to learn more about that, then you can ask me on the comment section and I will explain further. Another reason why your profit margin can be more than the 30% I have mentioned is the perceived value of your item. The perceived value of your item. The particular product you're selling, what is the value of that particular item to your target audience? How important can they do with or without that product? That could also trigger the rate or the percentage to which you should fix your profit margin. And then also the last one is the risk premium. 3, the risk premium associated with your kind of product. And so this one is closely related to this one. The risk aversion and the risk premium is closely related to how much is to set your profit margin at. So like I said before, the minimum rate at which you should set your profit margin should be 30%. Of course, it can be more than that depending on these three factors. Okay, now before you set your profit margin at 30%, because that's what I'm going to be dealing with, because that is the rate at which I'm telling you, if you set your profit margin on that rate, you will be able to make or maximize profit. Okay, so now let us look at these three important things I want you to keep in mind. While you're setting your profit margin, I want you to clearly identify your position in the distribution value chain. So you have to determine or identify, one, what is your status? Are you a primary producer? I will get to why I'm enlisting all this. Are you, number 2, a wholesaler? And number 3, are you a retailer? So this question will be answered by you and only you. You know the extent to which you're doing business, and so the kind of engagement you're carrying out in your business will determine if you are a primary producer. Are you producing those products yourself, or are you selling to some group of people in large quantity? That is what being a primary producer is. So if you're producing this product by yourself and then you're giving out to a whole lot of people in bulk, that makes you a primary producer with respect to the business or products you're dispensing. If you are a wholesaler, it means that you have been able to get that product from this guy here, and then you're selling it out not to the end users but to the retailer at a lower, greater quantity. Okay, so now that means that for you to be able to determine if you're a wholesaler or a retailer, that is why we have in product value chain, we have MOQ, which is the minimum order quantity. The reason why these things are there is because the distribution value chain has to be protected. If these things are not put in place, then there's chaos. People will just be selling at how they want, and then the market may not move progressively. And so if you are the primary producer, this is the point we are trying to make. If you are the primary producer, you have to identify the person who wants to buy from you. Is he or she a wholesaler? And so for you to identify this, you will set your MOQ. You can say the MOQ for this product you're producing or giving out is 300 pieces or quantity, whatever indices you're going to use. So for you to be able to say that you are a wholesaler, you have to buy at least 300 pieces. That's the minimum, but you can buy more than that. And that is when you'll be able to protect the product distribution value chain. If you're saying you want to jump the wholesaler and buy from me directly, who is a primary producer, I'm going to tell you that for you to do that, I'm going to increase my MOQ further. For you to do that, I'm saying you have to buy from 500 pieces upward. So that way you'll be able to protect your wholesaler. You're going to protect your wholesaler, because the retailer now, he doesn't have the capacity to outsmart the wholesaler. And you may not even need to increase the MOQ to 500. Your MOQ is already stated. Sorry for that. Your MOQ is already stated. So anybody that can meet up this MOQ of 300 pieces, you would consider that person as a wholesaler. And now, for the wholesaler will now say, okay, because this guy here, which is the retailer, cannot buy 300 pieces directly from the primary producer, let me bring it down to him. The wholesaler will now tell the retailer, for you to be a retailer of this product, I am bringing the MOQ down to 100 pieces. So that means, therefore, that the retailer will be able to buy 100 pieces, but he cannot afford 300 pieces. So he has to respect his space or place in the distribution value chain. So he can get 100 pieces from the wholesaler. And that way, the end users, which is the consumer, he can't really need 300 pieces of item. And so he will have to buy from the retailer, which is the retailer will now say, okay, for you to buy from me, you can buy from 1 pieces to whichever pieces you want to buy, to infinity. I hope you're getting the point. So the wholesaler can now buy from 1 pieces to whichever quantity he or she wants to buy. Now the essence of this is why it's important in the profit determination processes, because the primary producer has to protect the wholesaler. He also has to protect the retailer, so that the end user will not jump this chain and come to buy from him. Because if they do so, he's going to take off the wholesaler from business, he's going to take off the retailer from business, and he also knows that will not be fine for him, because the wholesaler will buy in bulk, moving his business faster. The retailer coming through the wholesaler will buy in a relatively lower bulk, which also takes his business faster. And so the primary producer is going to do this now. He will say, I'm going to sell this particular product for you at 30% discount rate. So he had already fixed the cost of his item. After everything, costing and everything, he has fixed item, but now he's going to say, this is how much my product should be sold, but then I'm going to give you a 30% discount rate, which therefore means that the wholesaler, while he is selling to the retailer, will now be calculating at a 30% profit margin. So therefore, the retailer will also do the same thing. If he is selling to the end user, he will also set this 30% profit margin. Thereby, he is also being protected, because the wholesaler will not sell at 30% discount rate to the end user. The wholesaler, if the end user wants to jump the retailer to buy from you, it means that the wholesaler is going to sell at a 60% discount rate, which means whether he jumps a retailer to come here, he will be buying at almost the same rate with the retailer. Okay, that way the wholesaler has been able to protect the retailer. If the end user jumped the retailer to buy from the wholesaler, he's buying at this discount rate. And if he wants to jump the retailer, the wholesaler, to buy from the primary producer, he's going to buy at a 90% discount rate. That way everybody will know their places. And so if, for instance, now that this one has been clearly stated, because I'm saying everybody should determine their position in the distribution value chain. So the essence of that is this, so that if you're jumping the wholesaler, if the end user is jumping the retailer, the wholesaler to buy from the primary producer, he has to buy at this discount rate. If he's jumping the retailer, he has to buy at this discount rate. But if he's buying from the retailer, then he will be doing so at a 30% discount rate, which is almost the same thing as buying from the wholesaler. That way everybody's interest is protected. So now back to how you can determine your own profit margin. So let's say you're buying phone at 100k now, and you're saying that you want to set your profit margin. All you need to do is $100 times 30%. 30% is 0.3. That means if you multiply $100 by 0.3, it's going to give you $130. So that means you will be selling your product. You don't have to engage yourself in too much calculation trying to find out your variable or your fixed cost. Of course you already know. Of course you're already trying to find out how your competitors are selling, or how whatever anybody's doing. You just know that you have a stated profit margin, which is 30%. And so you know that if everything it cost you to buy this phone was 100k, all you just need to do is, since you've decided to make it 30% for yourself, all you need to do is $100 times 0.3, and it's going to give you 130k. So if you're selling at 130k, you've made a 30% profit for yourself. And so the same thing goes for the wholesaler. If the end user wants to jump the retailer to buy from the wholesaler, because the wholesaler will have its own price, which will be lower than $100. And so if his price was that he's selling to the retailer is let's say $70, it means that if the end user wants to jump the retailer to buy from the wholesaler is now going to use a 60% profit margin, which is going to be 0.6, and that will be $70 times 0.6, which will give us something still around this margin or a little lesser. So I don't know if you get the point, but if you understand what we're doing here, then that's fine. And if you have further questions, then you can ask in the comment section. And so that brings us to the end of today's content. All we're saying is that if you're using the percentage profit process or approach, all you need is for you to determine your status in the distribution value chain. Are you a primary producer? Are you a wholesaler? Are you a retailer? And so that means MOQ is very important, so that all the players are protected. And then as the retailer, if you're selling directly to the end users, you're going to use the 30% profit margin. If you are a wholesaler and you know that this product is sold at $70, this is your rate as a wholesaler, and for the primary producer the rate is $50, while for the retailer the rate is $100. So that means if the primary producer wants to sell directly to the end user, in case the end user maybe is close to the person, because he has to protect all the player, it means he has to sell this product to the end user at a 90% profit margin. And if the retailer wants to jump the wholesaler and buy from him, it means he has to sell to him at a 60% profit margin. But if the wholesaler wants to buy from the primary producer, then he has to go back to the initial profit margin, which is 30%. And if the retailer wants to buy from the wholesaler, it has to be at the 30% profit margin. But if he wants to jump the wholesaler to buy from the primary producer, he has to buy at a 60% interest rate. So that brings us to the end of today's content. I hope you try to understand everything we said here, and if it makes sense to you, then kindly hit that subscription button. I will see you in our next content. I love you guys. Thank you. I remain Joshua Victor Emmanuel. Love you.